EVGA GeForce RTX 2070 Super Black Gaming Edition. This is what we're going to be putting against the Elden Ring today. Like the title suggests, in today's video, we're going to be looking and seeing how the 2070 Super Black Gaming Edition from EVGA is going to hold up against the Elden Ring, and what kind of performance you can expect out of this video card while playing this game. There will be timestamps in the description below. If there's a certain part of the video you'd like to jump to, you're more than welcome to do so. There's also some other links down that may interest you. And don't forget to do all that fun YouTube stuff on your way down that description box. So without wasting a lot of your time, let's see how this video card handles this new game. Alright, to start off this video, I think we need to look at the minimum and required specs to be able to run this game, and to go down through the components to make up today's test bed. Let's flip you over here and we'll run down through what they say should be the minimum specs of your PC and what the recommended specs should be. Alright, here we are on PCGamer.com. For the minimum specs, they have Windows 10. The processor should be an i5-8400 or the AMD Ryzen 3 3300X with 12 gigs of RAM. Video card should be a 1063 gig or an RX 584 gig. They do need to be DirectX 12. Need at least 60 gigs of space on your hard drive, and the sound card needs to be compatible with Windows. Recommended specs: Windows 10 or Windows 11. Processor needs to be an i7-8700K or a Ryzen 5 3600X, 16 gigs of RAM. Graphics card, they're saying a GTX 1070 8 gig or the Radeon RX Vega 56 8 gig. Also need to be DirectX 12, need at least 60 gigs of storage, and your sound card needs to be compatible with Windows. That's what they say the minimum specs, and the recommended specs is to be able to run this game at a decent frame rate. The system I'm using today is my personal rig. Let's flip over here and I'll show you what makes up today's test bed. To start out with, we have the AMD Ryzen 9 3950X, which is running at stock speeds. For the motherboard, we have the ASUS Prime X470 Pro motherboard. For RAM, we have G.SKILL's Ripjaws 5 series 32 gig 216 gig kit. Running at 3200 megahertz. There is 2 kits of this RAM in the system, so we'll actually run 64 gigs of RAM. This is the only thing that is overclocked in the system, so we are running 3200 megahertz speed. For the storage, we have the Intel 660p M.2 SSD, which this is what the game is running off of. Extra storage in my system, we have a 3 terabyte spinning rust drive. We also have a 2 terabyte spinning rust drive. To cool the processor, we have the Fractal Design Celsius Plus S28. For the graphics card, of course, we have the EVGA GeForce RTX 2070 Super Black Gaming, which is ran in its stock configuration. Power the whole system, we have the Corsair RM series 650 watt gold certified full modular power supply. To house everything, we have the Corsair 4000D airflow. For extras in the case, we have Asiahorse white extension cable, and we also have a 3-pack of Fractal Design Prisma AL12, which is 120mm fans to go along with what comes with the cooler. So as you can tell, we are well over spec for this game, even above what they recommend for the game. This is not a clean test bed. This is my personal rig. I use this rig on an every day-to-day basis. I did have MSI Afterburner running on the system, if I could get the numbers. I also had OBS running in the background recording, and I also had a couple Chrome tabs opened up with music playing in the background. I think this is pretty indicative of what most people would be doing with the system while playing the game. If you shut everything down, you could possibly get a little bit better frame rates out of it, but I don't know how much effect this would actually have on the performance or not. We looked at the minimum specs and the recommended specs for the game. Showed you what today's test bed was made out of. So let's flip you over here and I'll show you a picture of the map and show you how I went about doing my runs to get my numbers I did today. Okay, here we are. We started out at the first church that you come to as a new player. I did have the steed, and we took them and ran them up through the woods here. We went up into this first little area where you fight enemies. We didn't fight nobody. We just ran right past everything. Came down the road here a little bit, circled up and around, and we finished up right here. At the end of it, they say the big golden tree and the distance that you see in the game is what really kills the frame rates. So I'll put a photo up here now of it. At the end of each run, I made sure I captured that tree in the background behind the character in the game. And we did that just because they said that that tree really tanks the frame rate in the game. We didn't do no fighting or no killing while I did this. There's a reason why I did this. I know with all the explosions and everything while you're in the middle of a fight, it may hurt your frame rate some. But boss fights and stuff like that, it's so hard to replicate time and time and again for benchmarking. I decided not to do that. But after running up through them woods with all the textures and everything popping in, running down through that little settlement down there with everything popping in and out, and running back up and around, I think this is pretty indicative of what kind of performance you could expect out of this GPU running this new title. I did run 4K low settings. I ran 1440p settings, the 4 settings that is available to you. You got low, medium, high, and max. And I also ran a couple different settings at 1080p as well to see what you'd have to cut back to be able to play this at a pretty consistent 60 frames per second. So let's flip you over here and we'll look at this nice little fancy chart I put together for you. Alright, here we go. You got your max fraps in black, your average is in orange, your 1% lows is in yellow, and your 1/10% lows is in green. And right off the bat, I know a lot of you are going to notice this, 1440p medium settings, we got an extremely bad 1% low, 1/10% low, and a 1% low. I don't know why this is. I ran these benchmarks 3 different times to come up with these numbers, and that's just what it averaged out to be, and I don't understand it. We'll start up here at the top. We got 4K on low settings. We got the max of 58.1. The average is 46.4. 1% lows was 34.7. The 1/10% low was 26.5. 1440p max, we had a max of 60.2. We had the average of 49.8. We had the 1% lows of 32.3. We had the 1/10% lows of 25.7. At 1440p high, we had a max of 60.3. We had an average of 53.5. We had a 1% low, 37.2. We had a 1/10% low of 27.1. At 1440p medium, we had 60.3 of the max. The average was 58. We had a 1% low of 11.4, and we had a 1/10% low of 2.9. 1440p low, we had a max of 60.3, average was 59.8, 1% low is 48.8, 1/10% low was 37.6. 1080p max, we have a max of 60.3, we got an average of 58.1, we have a 1% low of 41.7, 1/10% low is 29.9. 1080p high, we had a max of 60.3. We had an average of 59.2. We had a low frap, 1% low is 41.1. 1/10% low is 30.4. 1080p medium, we had 60.3 as the max. The average was 59.8. 1% lows is 48.5. And the 1/10% low was 30.6. So these are the numbers we came up with. But this being a solo player, more or less exploration kind of game, I think at 60 frames per second would be alright, which I play on 4K 60Hz panel. And I believe this game's got a 60 frap or a 60 frame rate cap on it as well, which I'm sure there's some kind of way around that. I never dug into it to see how to get around that. And I run 60 Hz panels anyway, they are 4K. You noticed a lot of them was hitting 60.2, 60.3 as the max. I think they was hitting that 60.2 or 60.3 as the max because I was into the menu screen. I think that's where the max was sitting at. When this card came out, which it is a generation old now, or a generation and a half old, however you want to look at it, because it was a rebrand in 2070, this card was aimed at 1440p. That's why I really focused on the 1440p. I did the low 4K setting. I did a couple of the 1080p settings, which that's the way I play the game. I play the game on 1080p high settings. And by watching the gameplay, you look at the consistent frame rates of it, and to really get a good consistent frame rate, it is 1080p high or 1080p max. That is when you get the best frame timing and you don't have a whole bunch of big spikes in it, which means that there's when you get the smoothest gaming experience out of the game. And that's what I've been running my game on while I play. I am no kind of frap snob. I don't, because I run 4K monitors, I don't think I have to run everything at 4K. I'm more than happy with the experience I'm having in this video card. After looking at them numbers, I've said it before, I'll say it again in this video. Once you get into the boss fights, or even if you get in certain parts of the map, your frames may vary a little bit depending on how hard it is for the GPU to render the scenes. This is what I had available for testing today, and I done explained why I didn't do a boss fight, because doing boss fights there's no way to make sure that everything happens exactly the same way for benchmarking. That's why I didn't have no fighting into today's benchmark. I wanted to try to keep it as fair as I could, see what we get. But I hope this video helped you out. My recommendations, I believe this is still a pretty good card. If you're happy with 1080p high max settings, I think you'll be pretty happy with this. And you can even play at 1440p if you're happy with getting less than 60 frames per second on the average, which I'm alright with that too. With this kind of game, I don't believe a high frame rate is really necessary, but that's all personal opinion. Don't forget to do all that fun YouTube stuff on your way out of here. You all have a good day, and I'll see you in the next video or live stream.